Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rubio, for being here. On March 21st, 2025, the State Department approved the revocation of a student visa for Remeza Öztürk, a Turkish citizen who is a graduate student at Tufts University, apparently simply for writing an op-ed. According to an internal State Department memo, you took this action under your discretionary authority to revoke visas, and soon after you revoked her visa, armed and masked plainclothes officers snatched Ms. Öztürk off the street and transported her to a prison in Louisiana. Mr. Secretary, do you really think that Ms. Öztürk's op-ed results in a foreign policy consequence for the United States?
I believe that case involves someone whose visa we never would have granted had we known ahead of time.
I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking you if you think an op-ed, but that's exactly, in fact, what happened. The State Department wrote a memo concluding that you did not have sufficient grounds to revoke Ms. Öztürk's visa. There was no evidence showing that she'd engaged in any activities that were a threat to national security. And in fact, in May, a federal court ordered Ms. Öztürk's release from detention, noting that the sole basis for the government's detention appeared to be the fact that she co-authored this opinion piece in the Tufts newspaper in March of 2024. Where in the Constitution does it say that the Secretary of State can override the First Amendment protections of free speech? Is there a footnote that I missed somewhere?
There's no constitutional right to a student visa.
But is there a constitutional right? Does it say somewhere that Marco Rubio gets to determine which speech is appropriate and revoke student visas based on what you think constitutes free speech?
There's a statute that says the Secretary of State gets to determine whether someone is a threat. We deny visas every day all over the world.
Do you think that the Immigration and Nationality Act trumps the Constitution of the United States, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Congress can always change the law if you want, but I'm telling you,
Mr.
while I have the authority, I will continue to revoke the visas of these people that come here to tear this country apart.
You said that, Mr. Secretary. Let me reclaim my time because you are talking about revoking student visas based on what somebody says, and that means that you are trumping the legal supreme court, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of the United States.
No one has a right to a student visa.
Mr. Rubio, why did the administration need to use masked, armed, unidentified agents to whisk somebody off the street and deny her counsel for almost 24 hours after her arrest?
Well, you'll have to ask the agencies that did that work. I'm not responsible for that. I'm responsible for revoking the visas of these people that come to tear this country apart.
I'm talking about this particular case where you revoked the student visa of a Turkish citizen who was a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that you didn't like. And suddenly you allowed for masked men to whisk her off the street. And you have multiple jobs, apparently. You're the national security advisor as well. So don't tell me it's not your job who snatches her off the street.
We don't do the snatching, but I can tell you we do the visa revocations.
Let me ask you about the national security consequences of people, masked men on the streets snatching people off the streets. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrests, why are they hiding their identities?
Because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
So you think that U.S. agents who have almost always gone without face coverings, even when they're arresting some of the country's most dangerous criminals, suddenly have so much to fear from a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that they need to be masked? Is that
law
accurate?
student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed. She wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about her particular case.
Claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
Reclaiming my time, you revoked her student visa because she wrote an op-ed.
And we'll do more. We're going to do more.
I have another question for you. Would you revoke the visa of someone in the United States who published claims that, quote, Jews are an untrustworthy and dangerous group? Yes or no?
We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest who's here to stir up trouble.
Are you going to revoke the visa of somebody who made that?
I mean, the case, I'll look at it. I'm looking to get crazy people out of our country.
Actually, it's not just about revoking. You actually, Secretary Rubio, excuse me, reclaiming my time. Can you explain to me why the Trump administration granted refugee status to Charles Kleinhaus, the white Afrikaner who tweeted that exact statement that I just said? There's the case.
That's not a visa.
You granted You who granted that person
That's
to
a
enter the
totally
United
different process.
States.
That's someone that applied here through a totally different process.
Secretary Rubio,
student visas are a privilege.
Secretary
we deny
Rubio,
them all the time, and we'll
you
revoke them.
revoked
And
a visa based on an op-ed, and then you allowed for
Gentlelady's time has
masked men
expired.
That's
to
your
snatch
claim. That's
somebody off
accurate. That's
the
your claim.
street.
Your time's
That's your claim.
expired.
That's
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Rubio, thank you for being here today. As a member of the legislative branch, I don't have a special exemption to violate the law. You would agree with me, wouldn't you, that in America, no one is above the law?
Of course.
Okay. And in our system of government, it's Congress that makes the laws, the executive branch that executes the laws, and the judicial branch, when there's a dispute, that says what the law is. Is that right?
Within the context of separation of powers, yes.
Okay. And the reason that due process is so fundamental to America is before we put the entire weight of the federal government and snatch someone off the street, we might want to ask, hey, do you have something to say about that? Might we have the wrong person? And in the case of Mr. Garcia, the Trump administration admitted in court that they mistakenly deported him to El Salvador. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, said the Trump administration has to facilitate getting him back. Do you believe the administration has to follow that Supreme Court order?
Well, I don't believe he was wrongfully deported. He's an Salvadorian citizen
That's not
illegally
my
in the
question.
United
Do you believe the
States.
Trump administration has to follow the Supreme Court 9-0 unanimous decision?
Within the context of separation of powers. That
Okay.
no court can tell me how to conduct foreign policy. They can't tell me what I have to say to a president of another country, nor do I need to tell them what I told the president of another country, because I can't
I'm
conduct
just
foreign
asking you,
policy.
do you believe the Trump administration has to follow the unanimous Supreme Court
I believe we are
decision?
following it.
Okay, so my next question is, what steps have you or the State Department taken to facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
The conduct of our foreign policy is an executive function, and how I conduct
I'm
it,
just
I don't need to
asking
share
you.
with you.
Well,
and
let me
I
ask you
don't
this:
share with the court.
Have you or the State Department taken any steps to facilitate?
We've taken
the
steps,
return?
but I'm not going to tell you what they are, and I don't have to, because we conduct the foreign policy of the United States, and I can't conduct diplomacy with a
And
foreign leader
so-
if I come to committees and tell you what they said to me,
Right.
what I said to them,
you-
and more certainly a
Now,
court can't
so
tell me to say
you
that
have
either.
taken steps to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return.
We've made those.
And-
We've made that assertion, and we've made those assertions in court, and
All right,
we've
thank you.
complied.
I appreciate that. I'd like to ask you now about Ukraine. On August 24th, 2022, you tweeted the following. In the past 6 months since Putin's criminal invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainians have shown incredible bravery and strength as they fight to defend their homeland. On Ukraine's Independence Day, the free world applauds their courage and celebrates Ukraine's sovereignty. And then also in 2022, you said the people of Ukraine are tough people who will never accept being ruled by Putin. I want to ask you, I assume you continue to believe what you said in 2022, right? That we should celebrate Ukraine's sovereignty and that the people of Ukraine will never accept being ruled by Putin, right?
Yeah, that's why we're trying to end the war.
All right. On April 30th, 2018, you tweeted, glad to see State Department confirm delivery of Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. The U.S. should continue empowering Ukraine and other allies to defend against the threat of Russian aggression. You would agree with your prior statement that the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine against Russian aggression, right?
We've supported them more than anyone in the world.
All right. Unfortunately, it appears Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth went rogue and decided unilaterally to stop support for Ukraine earlier this year. Various news organizations reported that Secretary Hegseth paused military support to Ukraine without President Trump's knowledge. I'm going to read you from one article dated May 6, quote, Pete Hegseth canceled military aid flights to Ukraine just a week into Trump's second term without the president even knowing, according to Reuters. The order initially sparked mass confusion within the administration as national security officials in the White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department couldn't figure out who ordered the halt in flights. This is yet another example of the chaos and lack of cohesion that Hegseth has brought to the Pentagon from day one. Did Secretary Hegseth tell you before he ordered the halt in flights to Ukraine of military weapons?
I can't comment on that because I don't remember that. I don't remember ever hearing that, to what you're claiming now.
So your understanding is he never told you he was going to halt these flights?
I just know we're providing them assistance now, but the war ultimately has to end.
In 2016, you stated the following: from his repression of the Russian people and the assassination of his critics, to his dangerous invasion of Ukraine and the occupation of Crimea, to his threats against our NATO allies in Central Eastern Europe, to the war crimes committed by Russian forces, Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability. You would agree with your prior statement, right, that Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability?
I would agree that in my role as Secretary of State, my job is to bring Russia to the table to end the war. And that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to end the war so that more people don't die.
Thank you. And trying to end the war, I simply note that Putin on Palm Sunday launched a barrage of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. Right before his conversation with Trump recently, he launched a bunch of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. So clearly, Putin is giving the middle finger to you and to the president. I urge you to defeat Putin on the battlefield. That's the only way to get him to the negotiating table. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rubio, do you know what this is?
I'm sorry, my LASIX is not as good as
That's
it used
all
to
right.
be.
I'll explain. This is a ready-to-use therapeutic food, also known as a RUF. It's produced in the United States by Adesia Nutrition in Rhode Island and Manny Nutrition in Georgia from American-grown farm products. A single box that I have right here of this miracle product can save a child from dying of severe acute malnutrition in only 6 to 10 weeks. Now, since January, you have promised over and over again that foreign aid freezes will not include life-saving assistance. Russ saved the lives of children who are starving around the world. Do you agree that this product is life-saving aid?
It can be, yes.
Well, Secretary Rubio, the World Food Program estimates that 8,000 children die from hunger every day. Until last Friday, over 123,000 RUF boxes were purchased for Sudan, but were sitting in Rhode Island in a warehouse because of State Department delays. So my question for you is, are you doing everything you can to keep starving children from
There was
dying?
no State Department delays to that being deployed. There may have been other delays, but it wasn't State Department.
There were State Department delays. And it is clear that you have not done everything you can do to keep these kids from starving, because there are
no State
another
Department delays.
there are another 185,000 boxes of RUFs that the U.S. government and taxpayers have already paid for, sitting in that same warehouse, all because the State Department doesn't have a plan, doesn't have its stuff together to get this rolling. So I can think of several countries where this aid is desperately needed, where these boxes of RUFs could save hundreds of thousands of children's lives. And these delays have real consequences, not just for starving children, but also jobs at home. I talked to the CEO of Adesia, who said they had to lay off 10% of their team due to the lack of payments from the US government and a lack of clarity in March. So Secretary Rubio, will you commit to making decisions needed to move the remaining 185,000 boxes of RUFs to countries that need them by the end of this week?
Well, I'd be interested to learn what those impediments are.
Well, we've been talking about this for a while. I've sent you letters since
But there's
January.
no impediment on our end to
There
distributing
are
that.
impediments.
There are
I'm
others.
speaking
Part of
directly
it,
to the
Sudan
source.
is a war zone.
Secretary, I'm
that's an
reclaiming my
impediment.
time. This exists
other
as a
impediments.
problem, and you have not acted.
That's false.
And maybe it's the case that you have too many jobs, because I know it's the case. It must be a lot to be the National Security Advisor, the National Archivist, or the head of USAID. That's a lot. I understand a lot of footballs. You're a football player. That's a lot of balls to catch. But the issue here is
All right, we can
have
handle it.
children who are dying. So will you commit to continuing to fund the production, transportation, and distribution of these domestically produced life-saving products to save starving children around the world?
They're approved now.
They are not moving. I just told you about 185,000 boxes in Rhode Island. I
And
live
you
there.
need to figure out why they're not moving, because it isn't an impediment from us.
Sir, you need to figure out. That's actually your job, sir.
No, it's no impediment from the State Department.
Well, Mr.
There may be
Secretary, it
logistical
seems like you
impediments that have
will not
nothing to
make
do
a
with us.
commitment. Sir, it seems like you refuse to make a
We do
commitment.
more of that than anybody in the world, and we're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to do food aid. We're going to do more food aid than any country on the planet times 10.
Well, that's a lot of talk. But I believe
Those are numbers.
seeing is believing, and there
those are
is not to
numbers.
be seen.
Those are numbers. Those are facts. We do more foreign aid. and
I've
more
got
food
numbers. I've got 185,000 boxes that aren't moving. So,
Yeah, but the State Department doesn't move
I'm going to do you a
boxes.
little favor.
We authorize them to
Mr.
move, and they're
Secretary, I'm
authorized-
reclaiming my time, sir. I'm going to do
They're
you a
authorized
favor.
to move. Well, you ask questions you don't want anybody answer. I'm telling you, they're allowed
And I
to
have
move.
a question for you, and you're compelled to answer. Why don't you take 10 seconds now to turn to your staff and say, let's get this fixed?
My staff knows that this has been fixed.
No, it
There's no
hasn't been
impediment on the
fixed.
State Department
Well, then
side.
you have not proven that to me. If the people who are affected, both here domestically and around the world, are not receiving this life-saving product.
They are receiving it.
Look, you staked your career in the Senate on supporting humanitarian aid. but now you won't make a commitment, or you're saying things have been done that haven't been done.
Commitment.
You've made a commitment?
We do more food aid than anybody in the world, and we're doing more today than anybody in the world.
Secretary, I'm reclaiming my time. You are speaking in generalities. I'm talking about specifics.
I'm speaking in specifics. We do more than anybody in the world, and we're doing more than anybody in the world right now at this very moment.
That's hyperbole, sir, because this has been disrupted
does more?
because of your freezing of aid.
Who does more food aid than the United States?
Sir, why are you asking me questions? My job is to ask you questions.
You're the one that's claiming that we're not.
Secretary, I'm reclaiming my time. Secretary, I'm reclaiming my client. This is why I'm introducing the Rubio Act. So you focus on the one job that the Senate gave you to serve as our Secretary of State because you are clearly distracted, okay? After the last few months, I understand why President Trump has such colorful nicknames for you. You're obedient. You're following the rules. You will do anything the president tells you to do without regard for the law, the Constitution, America's security, or standing as a leader in the world. Unlike you, I do not fear crossing Donald Trump. I refuse to give up on these children. I will be calling you once a week until you take action to fund RUF and actually prove that you're doing this job to make sure you know how many children have died on your watch. Will you pick up my call?
No children are dying on
Will
our
you
watch.
pick up my call, sir?
Pick up your call?
When I call you to check in on your progress.
Our
Gentleman's
progress
time
is
has
already being
expired.
made. We already
Representative
do more than
Mills is
anybody in the world.
recognized.
No, but he's made some strong accusations here. We're doing more than anybody in the world. That food is being distributed now, and he knows that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to the war in Sudan. This is, as you know, the world's largest displacement and humanitarian crisis. 500,000 people are facing famine. I saw firsthand the suffering when I visited Sudanese refugees in Chad. Earlier this year, and again yesterday, you reiterated that the Rapid Support Forces, a militia, is committing a genocide in Sudan. Is that correct?
And we're very concerned about what both sides are doing, frankly, but the RSF in particular.
Correct. I agree with that. You also said as part of that all of our engagement with the UAE, we need to raise the fact that they are openly supporting an entity that is carrying out a genocide. And yet, President Trump continues to arm the UAE. In fact, he just blew through Ranking Member Meek's congressional hold on over $1 billion in arms sales, ignoring this committee's longstanding role as an independent check on major arms sales. And we can have a policy debate here about the merits of continuing to arm the UAE or not, despite this genocide. I had that same conversation with Secretary Blinken. But actually, I want to talk about the events that led up to that decision. So on April 30th, the Trump Organization, which Donald Trump still owns, unveiled plans to build an 80-story Trump Tower in Dubai. Then on May 1st, Trump's crypto company, World Liberty Financial, secured a $2 billion deal with an Emirati company with deep ties to the government. And only 11 days later, on May 12th, your department notified our committee that it would ignore Ranking Member Meek's holds on UAE arms sales. Secretary Rubio, we have a president who is personally profiting from a deal with a foreign government-backed company at the same time he is selling lethal weapons to that same government. Isn't that a clear conflict of interest?
I think no matter who was president, they would have to deal with the UAE. We have to. They're a member,
That's not my question. We can have a policy debate about how we should engage with the UAE.
You're making claims about corruption, and I'm answering that any president in the United States, I don't care who the president is, would have to deal with the UAE. They're a member of the Abraham Accords, number one. They've been incredibly cooperative on a bunch of other issues. We don't agree with them on 100%. We have concerns about some of the things they do, but this is called the balancing of foreign policy.
Secretary
It is in our
Rubio,
national
I don't
interest
disagree with
to have
you.
a good relationship with the UAE, despite the fact that there are things we do we don't like.
Secretary Rubio, I don't disagree with you. I just visited the UAE a couple weeks ago and had these very same conversations there, but I don't think this is a complicated question. President Trump is personally profiting from a deal with a foreign government while selling weapons to that same government who is enabling a genocide. Policy aside, are you really saying you don't think this is a conflict of interest?
No, you're making claims. The president's family owns a business, and they can conduct business anywhere in the world they want. The president's never once raised business deals in UAE when talking about it. Any president would have to have a relationship with the UAE.
Secretary Rubio,
the
that's
previous
just silly.
administration had one too.
President Trump has retained his ownership of these companies, and I have an image right here from World Liberty Financial's website. So the idea that President Trump is not the face of the brand of this company on top from benefiting from them, and it literally says on the website that Mr. Trump and his family members own a 60% stake in this company, that's silly. So we can talk about the policy merits. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you believe it's a conflict of interest to have a president personally profiting from a deal with a foreign government while selling weapons to that same government who's enabling a genocide?
I don't accept the premise of your question. I think this has nothing to do with personally benefiting from anything. This has to do with the fact that in order to conduct foreign policy in the Middle East, you're going to have to deal with the UAE.
Mr.
And we're
Secretary,
gonna have to have
this is
deals
a
in place with
clear
the UAE.
conflict of interest, and anyone with any common sense can see that. The president is personally benefiting from billions of dollars of deals, and he doesn't care at all about the people of Sudan who are experiencing famine and genocide. It's shocking to me that you can't admit that. It's clear that you seem more concerned about staying in Trump's good graces than sticking up for human rights and American values that you once were a champion for. With that, I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to Representative Olszewski.
Well, you make these claims about staying in good graces. You accuse people of being
Reclaiming my time,
corrupt.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate
do
a softball
UAE.
for you, yes or no, since I don't have a lot of time, and I appreciate it. The chairman gives me a few seconds back. Softball for you. Would you, yes or no, as Secretary, find it outrageous for you to solicit or accept a $200,000 Rolls Royce from a foreign government for personal or State Department use?
That offer's never been made to me.
Yes, so you would reject that offer?
The offer of a Rolls Royce?
Yes.
I don't understand the purpose of that
You
question.
would.
That's a silly question.
The fact that you can't answer the question,
I
Mr.
just answered it. I
Secretary,
said it's silly.
silly because you would accept it or not?
Of course not. Who would accept it? But no
Well,
one's
then
getting.
I think you should
what are
maybe
you
perhaps,
equating that to?
Mr. Secretary, reclaim my time. I think you are an honorable man by most accounts, but the man that you work for doesn't. And the fact that he is soliciting and accepting a $400 million plane is problematic. And you should know about it. It came up in a Senate hearing. You should read about it, add it to your reading, because it is problematic for foreign policy. It adds to the corruption that my colleague just said. And I hope you speak out against it. Thank you.